Hey guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. This is your host Thomas Tyree from On the Hot Podcast. Today, I have some bonus content for you guys today. The bonus content we'll be having today will be regarding in the sport of boxing. And in this bonus content video for you guys, I'll be sharing my thoughts on the fight that took place last night between Canelo Álvarez and John Ryder. So last night in the world of boxing, Canelo Álvarez was successful and won his fight by unanimous decision, going 12 rounds with John Ryder, and successfully retained his WBA, WBO, IBF, and WBA championships to remain the undisputed king at the 168-pound division in the sport of boxing. So last night, it was good for Canelo. He had his homecoming in his home country of Mexico. First time that he's fought there in 12 years. So Canelo Álvarez took care of business. He did what he was supposed to do. Walk out of Mexico and fight in front of your home country and win victoriously against John Ryder. He did what he was supposed to. He got the win. But I have a lot of respect for John Ryder after this fight last night. John Ryder, in the middle of the fifth round, got dropped by a good 1-2 combination that Canelo Álvarez landed to John Ryder. John Ryder got back up. He looked at his corner. He was questioning himself. He wanted to continue in the fight. He suffered, I believe in the third round, he suffered a broken nose. So you guys know nose injuries, it's hard to breathe when you have a broken nose. He was gushing down blood from his nose from the third round all the way to the end of the 12th round. Kudos to him for getting up and even fighting harder for the remainder of the fight. Respect to John Ryder finishing out with a broken nose all 12 rounds of boxing last night. But my thoughts on Canelo Álvarez's performance, it's hard. But I have to tell the truth here. Canelo Álvarez does not look like the same fighter, the same Canelo Álvarez that we, as the world of boxing, once loved. He is still an elite fighter. He is still one of the best fighters. He's obviously the undisputed king at the super middleweight division in the sport of boxing, but he does not look like himself. He looks like a shell of his former self. He's not the guy that he used to be. And I'll explain, there's a lot of reasons behind that, and I'll explain those reasons right here, right now. Starting off with number one, mileage. I do believe that Canelo Álvarez, his gas tank is heading on E for the remainder of his career. Yes, he's still young. He's still only 32 years of age, but he went pro at 15 years old. His record, he has 59 wins, 2 losses, and 2 draws to his resume. We do the math on that's a total of 63 fights, and he turned pro at the age of 15 years old. So that's a long time in the sport of boxing. It's incredible that someone like Canelo Álvarez is able to fight over 60 fights in his career with all the guys that he's gotten in the ring with. He's fought some great competition over his career, but I do believe that mileage, that gas tank, we're seeing the end of Canelo Álvarez as he's getting to the finish line of his illustrious career. Second reason, his last 3 fights, Canelo Álvarez has not looked like the dominating Canelo Álvarez has been the face of boxing since Floyd Mayweather retired back in 2017 officially. Yes, I understand that Canelo Álvarez had a hand injury. He went ahead and took care of that, got surgery, and that's why this was the first time he's fought since September. But in his performance, I'll go over his last 3 performances that he's been in the boxing ring. Last year, in his performance around this time last year, last May, when he was in the ring with Dimitri Bivol, he was outboxed and dismantled. The only time that's ever happened to Canelo Álvarez in his career, dating all the way back to 2013 when he got outboxed, outclassed by Floyd Mayweather. That's the only guy that's ever did that to Canelo Álvarez. But Dimitri Bivol made it look easy. He dismantled him, took away Canelo Álvarez's best attributes of what he likes to do in the ring, and he just didn't have an answer for him. He got outboxed from round 1 all the way to round 12 in that fight last May. Then, moving on to last September in the trilogy fight that we saw between himself and Triple G, he was firmly in control of that fight in the first half of the fight. And in the second half of the fight, he didn't put away Triple G. He let Triple G come back into the fight. It was a more competitive fight in the second half because Triple G got himself back into the fight. I feel like Canelo was off. He wasn't landing the shots that he could have to put maybe even got the stoppage on Triple G, but Triple G came back and made the fight even more competitive. I feel like in that fight, he got very sloppy in the second half. Very sloppy defensively. I feel like he might have been a little fatigued, if you want my honest opinion as well. Nearly lost that fight in that trilogy against Triple G in the second half of that fight. Then last night against John Ryder, and all respect to John Ryder, but this is an opponent that Canelo Álvarez promised his homecoming fans that he would get the knockout win, and he did not get the knockout win. He got the win by unanimous decision, but is that really how Canelo Álvarez wanted to come back to his home country, somewhere he hasn't fought in 12 years, just to get a unanimous decision win? I don't think so. And deep down inside, I don't believe that Canelo Álvarez is truly happy with his fight last night, his performance. So last night, obviously, like I said in the beginning of the segment, that Canelo Álvarez scored the knockdown in the 5th round. I truly thought that was going to be the end of the fight. We saw John Ryder's nose just gush, bleeding from the broken nose injury. We saw him look to his corner. He was questioning himself. I believe he didn't even get up until the count of 7, count of 8. He was really questioning if he wanted to get back up. But John Ryder continued. He could hardly breathe with the nose injury. Obviously, you can only breathe 2 ways, out of your mouth, out of your nose. You take away the nose in a fight, you don't want to be gasping for air out of your mouth because, one, you already have a mouth guard in, so you really can't do that in the sport. But it was so hard for him to breathe. He was bleeding with a nose injury, and Canelo Álvarez just let him back into the fight. Anytime that I've ever seen Canelo Álvarez have his opponent hurt, Canelo Álvarez puts his foot on the gas pedal and finishes him off. And he did not do that. He let John Ryder get back into this fight, and John Ryder continued the fight all the way until the 12th and final round of the fight. And also, Canelo Álvarez's defense looked very, very, very suspect last night against John Ryder. John Ryder was landing a lot of uppercuts. He had a lot of good jabs. And he got caught with a lot of counter shots. Canelo Álvarez, once upon a time, was one of the best defensive fighters in the sport of boxing. But last night, the way I saw all them uppercuts landing, those jabs landing, those combination strikes that John Ryder was putting on John Ryder obviously walked with some bruises on his face and obviously the broken nose injury. But Canelo Álvarez looked like he was really in a scrap with one of the most elite, talented guys at the 168-pound division. And he wasn't. And that's a problem for me for Canelo Álvarez moving forward, because if your defense isn't up for some guys that's calling you out, some guys that you want to rematch with that I'm going to get to in a few moments, you got to bring more to the table than what I saw last night against John Ryder. So what's next for Canelo Álvarez? Well, I believe we're only in the first half of boxing. Canelo Álvarez is obviously going to fight at least one more time before the calendar year 2023 is over. There's 2 big fights that I could see Canelo Álvarez having by the end of the year. And I think we're going to get at least one of these fights by the end of the year. So fight number 1, I think we're going to see Canelo. I think Canelo has a chance of making happen for the sport of boxing by the end of the year. It's a rematch with Dmitry Bivol. He wants to rewrite his loss last year. Like I said, he was the only man that ever beat Canelo Álvarez other than Floyd Mayweather. He dismantled him. He dominated him the whole entire fight. And he wants this rematch to revenge his loss. And I respect Canelo Álvarez for that. However, I just believe this time around the rematch, it just makes more sense to be at the super middleweight division at 168 pounds. If you guys remember, Canelo Álvarez actually moved up in weight and went up to 175 to fight Dmitry Bivol. He challenged Dmitry Bivol for his WBA championship at 175. In that fight, he looked very uncomfortable. That's a huge weight. He jumped a weight class to be a 2 weight class champion. And he did not look comfortable. He looked very gassed, very tired out at 175. And he looked like he barely continued that fight, not because he was hurt, but he was fatigued in that fight. He was getting tired in that fight with Dmitry Bivol. He could barely keep up with him. So I feel like 175 is not a comfortable weight class for Canelo Álvarez. Viewing the rematch, it just makes more sense at 168. And if you want to make more money out of it, you want to make this rematch a bigger deal than what it is, have it at 168 for an undisputed championship fight, because you went up to fight Dmitry Bivol at 175 last year and try to take off his WBA championship from him. Now that Dmitry Bivol beat you, he should get the chance to come to your weight class and take your championships, because that's what Canelo Álvarez tried to do the first time around. So it just makes more sense. It could be more build to the fight, more money in the fight. If it's an undisputed championship fight at 168, I think that's the only way Dmitry Bivol is going to take this rematch, because he's already stated he wants to fight at 168. But Canelo is like, no, I want the same thing at 175. You lost, buddy. And it's time for, if you're going to have the rematch, that's the only right way to do it. At 168, undisputed championship fight. My second fight for Canelo Álvarez, if that fight does not happen by the end of the year, he has to fight David Benavidez by the end of the year. Yes, I've seen the reports that David Benavidez, fresh off his win against Caleb Plant a few months ago, I'm seeing the rumors that him and David Morrell might be next. But if David Benavidez has the chance to fight Canelo Álvarez, he's going to turn that fight down and go straight for an undisputed championship opportunity. So I think this is the second fight we should see if the Bivol rematch does not happen. But let's be honest, David Benavidez is one of the upcoming stars in the sport of boxing. He had a impressive win against Caleb Plant in the month of March. He's solidifying himself to be the next big thing at 168 pounds, in my opinion. And the fact of the matter is, he has truly been Canelo Álvarez's mandatory for quite some time. The last two fights that David Benavidez has been in the ring, he's actually been the mandatory for the WBC championship, one of the championships that Canelo Álvarez has. So they've been trying to order this fight for so long. He's been the number one contender, and he just beat the top guy other than Canelo Álvarez in this division, and Caleb Plant. So what's holding him back from getting a championship opportunity against Canelo Álvarez? I think it's only fair that Canelo Álvarez gives David Benavidez a shot at the WBC championship. As a matter of fact, it might as well be an undisputed championship fight. He's been the number one contender for quite some time now. He's been racking up some impressive wins. It just makes sense. Why would we not get that? And I really do believe that the WBC needs to crack on Canelo Álvarez if he doesn't fight Dimitri Bivol, and David Benavidez and his camp wants this fight next. And if Canelo doesn't give it to him, strip him of his championship. This is not the first rodeo of Canelo Álvarez being stripped because mandatories want to fight him. Realistically, he's got to take one of those two fights by the end of the year. Maybe it might change my opinion on Canelo if he can knock off Dimitri Bivol or David Benavidez by the end of the year. But it just seems like we're seeing the end of Canelo Álvarez. He's not the same elite fighter he once was a few years ago. I am seeing holes in his game, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys watching and listening that follow the sport of boxing know what I'm talking about. But that is all the time I have for you guys today. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. This is your host, Thomas Tyree, signing off, and I'll see you guys on next week's episode.